I need about 5 more screens to do this. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jamie Parson, and I'm a faculty member in the Finance, Banking, and Insurance Department. And I want to welcome you all to Courageous Conversations, which is a panel discussion series where we talk about the experiences and challenges industry professionals face in the workplace with various identities. This semester's panel discussion centers around religious identity. And we'd like to thank all of our panelists and for all of you participants attending this evening's event. I recognize how many folks are zoomed out right now, so I do appreciate all of you coming this evening. A few quick logistics I'd like to go over. This event has 2 parts. So at the end of the panel discussion portion, we'll provide you with an opportunity to join a breakout session, a breakout for Q&A and a couple other guided discussion questions. Please note, if you are attending this event for class, credit will only be awarded if you participate in both phases of tonight's event. If you have questions during tonight's event, please feel free to send them directly to Dr. Tilton or myself in the chat. And the participant chat feature is on because I know I like to sometimes say hi to my students if I see them or if I see a familiar face. And so definitely want to create that community tonight, but please be aware that all chats are then accessible by the host at the end of the event. I'd like to take a moment to invite Dr. Marty Meznar, who is the Associate Dean of our Global and Civic Engagement from the Dean's Office, to offer remarks. And after Dr. Meznar speaks, I'll invite Dr. Tilton, Jacqueline Tilton, a professor in management, and also the co-coordinator of this event, to introduce our moderator, and then we'll proceed from there.
Thank you so much, Jamie. I really appreciate that. I'm the Associate Dean for Global and Civic Engagement, and I'd like to start off by thanking Dr. Parson and Dr. Tilton for all the effort they put into putting this together. I know Dr. Parson has been doing this for years now, which is why we have such a smooth operation going on. And we really appreciate the effort that you guys have put in. Second, I'd like to thank the panelists. These are people that are just willing to share their experience and to teach us. I know we often fear what we don't understand, and anything that creates more understanding among people with different opinions, different thoughts, and different backgrounds, a step in the very right direction. I feel like one of the stats on the screen that came up at the beginning said that 56% of Americans consider religion to be a very important part of their identity. And in my case, I was born in Brazil, South America, because my parents were missionaries. And if I try to trace back my life, well, religion shaped it from birth on, and it's been a real journey for me. And I'm eager to hear about other people's journeys and try to understand what is going on in their minds and their lives and see how it parallels mine or not. So thank you all for being here. I'm really thrilled by the attendance. The dean will be joining in the meeting shortly, but she is in another Zoom meeting. She also needs multiple screens on her desk so she can participate in multiple meetings at once. But thank you all for being here. Thank you for the time you're investing in this and for the direction you're headed.
All right, and I have the privilege of introducing our moderator for the evening, Hannah Ross. Hannah is a junior studying management with a focus in human resources and identifies with the Jewish faith. Within the Walker College of Business, she is a Walker Fellow, a Holland Fellow, the VP of Membership for Enactus Appalachian, and a member of Women in Walker. Take it away, Hannah.
Thank you, Dr. Tilton. So now we're going to introduce our panelists for the evening. So panelists, will you please state your name, your occupation, and your religious identity when I call on you? So first, we are going to start with Pastor Reggie Hunt. Pastor Hunt, will you please introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Reggie Hunt, and I pastor Cornerstone Summit Church here in Boone. Been in Boone for 25 years. I'm also the director of leadership at App State Athletics. Cornerstone Summit has been one of the multi-ethnic churches here in Boone and identify as Christian. And we recently purchased land, kind of making history as the first multi-ethnic church to own a building in over 100 years. So thank you for having me on tonight.
Thank you, Pastor Hunt. Dr. Iyer, will you please introduce yourself?
Sure, thank you all. I'm Lakshmi Iyer. I'm a faculty in the Walker College of Business in the Department of Computer Information Systems, and originally from India, and I affiliate with the Hinduism or Hindu faith.
Thank you. Next, we have Rose Hamid. Rose, will you please introduce yourself?
My name is Rose Hamid. My mother is from Barranquilla, Colombia. My father is Palestinian. I grew up in the Catholic tradition and currently practicing Islam. And I have been a flight attendant for 35 years. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I have a nephew who goes to App State.
Thank you, Rose. We're thrilled to have him here. Next, we have Ryan Dorr. Ryan, will you please introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Ryan Dorr. I grew up in the Catholic faith and I have since left the church and now identify as non-practicing or agnostic. I currently work as a data analyst and business intelligence developer for Cigna healthcare group.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
Next, we have Kobe Ellick. Kobe, will you please introduce yourself?
Sure thing. Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming. My name is Kobe Ellick. I just graduated from Appalachian this past May and relocated to Richmond, where I'm working for James River Insurance Company as an underwriter. I identify as a conservative Jew, and at Appalachian, I was involved with Alpha Epsilon Pi, which is the Jewish fraternity at App State, and Hillel, which is the Jewish Students Organization. Thank you.
Thank you, Kobe. And last but certainly not least, we have Andrea Breazeale-King. Andrea, will you please introduce yourself?
Of course. Good evening, everyone. I am Andrea Breazeale-King. I am joining you from Raleigh, North Carolina. I'm a 1994 graduate of Appalachian State University, the MBA program. I love saying that. I'm very proud of that. I am a 28-year veteran of human resources. I currently serve as the VP of Human Resources at the Interfaith Food Shuttle. And this evening, I will be sharing kind of a perspective from a organizational and human resources standpoint.
Thank you, Andrea. And thank you all panelists again for being here. We're thrilled to have you for this conversation. So now we're going to get into the questions for this evening. So our first question is for all panelists, and feel free to take a moment and think about the question and then jump in whenever you want to answer. So our first question is, in a few sentences, how would you define your core beliefs, and what would you say is unique to your belief system compared to others?
I don't mind starting. So I thought about this question prior to this event and realized there's a couple core beliefs that I personally have as a Jewish individual and that Judaism also has in total, I guess. I think one of the biggest ones for me is the ability to question. Judaism is all about questioning. And excuse me, sorry, my computer shut off. Got a lot of computers going on here. But Judaism is all about questioning and being able to ask questions about the Torah and its interpretations. And as Judaism has developed over thousands of years, that has created a lot of different interpretations, and there's a lot of different sects of Judaism as well. Compared to other religions, that is a very unique thing. And sometimes compared to other religions, it's not. Like Christianity also believes in that. I'm not going to touch on that because that's one of the other panelists' area. But another one is tikkun olam, which is an idea. That's the Hebrew word for repairing the world, which is a really big core value of Judaism. And that really just means to do what we can to make the world a sacred place and take care of the earth and one another. And I think there's a lot of commonality with other religions with that, and we'll hear more about that in a little bit.
I can go next. Again, I'm Lakshmi Iyer. As I said, I affiliate with the Hindu faith. So I was born in India and have lived in the US since 1989. And I feel I have both understood and able to explain my faith a lot better since I've moved here, because there are people that ask me a lot of questions. And when you have to explain to somebody what you believe in, you kind of start researching more. So first of all, Hinduism is not a religion. So it may be a little odd for you to hear that, because that's the way it's been coined. But Hinduism or Hindu is it's a faith, it's a way of life. And it's one of the oldest existence of any religion. And we don't have like a commandment or a founder of the religion. So it's really old, and we have been taught much of what we believe, through the scriptures. But there are 4 core beliefs that I am able to relate and I practice. The first being that you may have heard the term called dharma. This is it's the way you conduct your life. There's some moral principles, and the way you conduct your life, that's dharma. The second one is karma. That is, whatever you do in your life comes back to you, right? So if you do good deeds, you get good karma. If you do bad deeds, you get bad karma. So it's like when I was young, I was explained it's like an accounting spreadsheet. Like, you've got your debits and credits, right? So the more good you do, the more, better person you are. The third thing that we believe, that the soul is eternal, like there's a soul in everybody. And the aim of that soul, eventual goal, is to reach God or the supreme being. And you do that by purifying your soul, that being a good person. The more karma, the more good deeds you get, eventually you will reach that what we call moksha, or reaching God. And it takes a long time, because in each life, we do good and bad things, and it takes a number of cycles. So in Hinduism, when a person dies, the soul leaves the body and it is reborn as something else, right? So it's very important to understand that concept. So that's the third principle. Okay. So the fourth being that in Hinduism, we believe in one supreme God, which has no form, but we are a henotheistic practice. That means while we believe in this one supreme, we do have other forms. There's a God in everything and every being. So when you hear Indian folks say namaste to you, that means they say they're bowing to the God in you, right? So there's a God in everything. So we have a fire God, we have a monkey God, we have an elephant God, we have a snake God. There's a God for everything. So so we do allow for that. And it's a very, very tolerant practice. And I will talk more about that in the later questions. But I think there are some similarities to other practices and religions, because I think every religion preaches to do good for others. So I think that's one of the common fundamental things that I feel is true to any religion or any faith. Thank you.
I'll go. This is what I failed to mention during my introduction, is that I do identify as Christian, grew up Southern Baptist, but now I feel that I'm more spiritual than religious. I think one of the principles that I've built my life around is that of the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you, and practice kindness and tolerance for all people. And that's kind of the same philosophy that I bring to my work as an HR professional when I'm dealing with people from various backgrounds and different lived experiences, having empathy and trying to understand the lens through which they see the world. And that helps me as I am building policies and things around organizational development. The name of our organization is a little misleading. It's called the Interfaith Food Shuttle, but it's not really founded on a religious basis like, say, a Samaritan's Purse is there in Boone, that kind of considers itself an evangelical Christian-based organization. Our name came from 2 women who founded it. One is Catholic and one is Jewish. And when they came together to build this nonprofit organization, a name that suited them was interfaith because they were interfaith. And we wanted to build it as an organization that would be welcoming of all people from all backgrounds.
I'll jump in. As I said, as someone who's non-theistic or agnostic or whatever, it's really my personal journey is basically breaking the bonds of formerly believing in the Catholic Church and in Christianity. So everything about that is, in my perspective, is comes in the form of absence. It's about breaking the rules and finding out where you are later. How that's different from others is that there's absolutely there does not appear to be a guiding light. There's no organizations for people who don't believe in anything. And with that, it's kind of this feeling of free fall at first. You feel as if you're breaking a lot of rules. You're letting people down. It feels like you're telling other people who ascribe, 56% of people who believe that religion is an important part of their life. You feel like you're telling them that they're wrong or something. And then over time, it kind of it fades into just nothing. So it's definitely, that's the unique part about it. It feels like you've dropped out, you're not contributing, you're not represented, and that's not like a pitch or a calling card for other people to join that, but it is that's the defining characteristic of it from my perspective. Another hard part about it is communicating with all of your family and friends and community members who do hold religion very, very in high esteem. And I view a lot of those people as fantastic people, and I really respect what they're able to get out of it. But again, it's really hard to quantify, a driving force or an organization or anything from it. Like Andrea said, I still try to live my life by a lot of those same principles, and all of my philosophical upbringing is still, woven into my morality and what I believe to be correct, a correct way to live your life. So it is hard to separate the practice of religion from the imprint of religious upbringing.
So I feel what you're saying, Ryan, because I actually grew up as a Catholic, my mother being from South America, my father being from Palestine. He grew up in the Muslim tradition, but he didn't really learn much about his faith, Luskin, Dr. Iyer. I'm not sure how to say your name, I'm sorry. But you mentioned how you started to learn more about your faith when you came to the States, and you had to explain it. So my father was in that same situation as a lot of people are, where they don't really understand their faith when you're in a situation where the people are getting their faith through osmosis pretty much, until you kind of come to the US where you're kind of forced to, or where you're the minority religion, you're kind of forced to learn about your faith at that time. Because my mother was Catholic, it's a long story, but we grew up Catholic. And so I went to church, went to CCD, we were baptized, First Communion, and just before confirmation, my dad had at that point started to learn about his faith, and he wanted us to learn about it. And he wanted us to wait until we were older to get confirmed. And that made a lot of sense to me, because there was a lot of stuff that I really didn't believe about that I had been taught. So I grew up, if I had known what the word was, I would have called myself or identified as agnostic, where I had a really strong belief in God and this power, but I had a really big distrust of organized religion. To me, it seemed like it was being used to keep people in control and to pit people against each other. So that's what I grew up with from the time that I kind of left the church until the time that I started practicing Islam in my mid-20s. And at the time, though, I never felt the need to explain myself, oddly enough, right? And so that's, to me, I just didn't mention it. It just didn't come across my mind. So it was just something that I didn't even realize that's what I was until I was older, to realize that there was a thing called, being agnostic. But I started to practice Islam just before my children were born. My husband is Muslim also, but not very practicing. And I started to learn about it because I had a bunch of information, and it just made sense to me. It applied to my to my mind and my soul. So the things about Islam are that we believe that it is the continuation of the one religion. We believe that there's just one God who created everything. And he sent messengers from the time of Adam and on through the rest of the prophets, and now the final prophet, including Moses, Abraham, Jesus, and then the final prophet being Prophet Muhammad. And he sent guidance to all of his prophets and all of his people. And we are striving to follow that guidance. And that includes the tenets of a lot of the other faiths people, the other elements that people mentioned, of how to treat each other and how to be good stewards of the earth and good people in general, and then also be pleasing to God as well. And in doing all those things, you are pleasing to God. And I think one of the things that is kind of different from the Islamic perspective is that we believe in the faiths of the people that came before. So that's one of the big differences. The end.
I'll try to be the thing said a few sentences, and I'm not always known to be able to describe something in a few sentences, especially as a Black Southern preacher, but I'll try in a few sentences to describe. And the question says your beliefs. I won't start off right now talking about the theology of Christianity and that, you know, around God incarnate through Jesus and the death, burial, resurrection of Jesus, those pieces. And my responding to the question of my core beliefs about Christianity are kind of summed up in compassion and reconciliation. I actually, in my high school years, was very drawn and identified a lot with aspects of Islam, especially from the Nation of Islam. Growing up in Winston-Salem, my mother working at a historical Black community, and we lived in a all-white community. There's aspects of empowerment that I actually identified with Islam and the Nation of Islam at that time. And what was, I try not to compare to other religions, because I personally believe that comparison is the thief of joy. And I don't like to belittle anybody else's faith. I like to use the word unique. What I feel is unique about my journey of faith in Christianity is more about a relationship with God. And I have a very committed heart to reconciliation. When I was in the 5th grade, what captured my heart about Christianity and what brought my heart back to Christianity was the concept of racial reconciliation. Not only reconciling God and man, but reconciling humanity. And even during this election week, my hope and sanity has been anchored in the hope that racial reconciliation would be something that that I don't know if I'll see in my lifetime anymore, but that my kids possibly would. And that was one of the pieces that drew me to choose Christianity amongst a lot of other religions that I studied in my high school and college years.
Thank you, panelists, for your answers. So now we're going to move into the next question. And this question is going to ask, what are some of the traditions of your faith that can present issues or challenges in the workplace setting, either for you personally or for the people of your religion? And we know that you don't represent everyone in your religion, but if you feel comfortable representing your local religious group or congregation, and just talk about that a little bit.
I can go. As I said, Hinduism is one of the most tolerant practices. So, you know, when I grew up in India, you know, we were familiar with all the religions. I've been to mosques, synagogues, you know, all the churches, you know, every faith, you know, Gurdwara or a Jain temple or anything. So it doesn't prevent us from understanding or knowing or observing other faiths or offering a prayer there. It's very tolerant. And I have not, I really have kept religion outside of my work. I mean, I've never expected anything except for, helping or answering questions or misinterpretations or when people ask me about something about Hinduism, I've tried to explain it, but I've never had any particular issues at work. One of the things that I did observe, since I was familiar with other religious practices, not here, but prior to coming to App State, I was at UNC Greensboro, and one day a student came knocking to my office, and she was a Muslim faith. And she knocked. I've never met that student before, but the student felt comfortable coming into my office saying that, I need to offer prayers. Can I use your office? And she said, well, you can continue to work. I'm not going to disturb you. And it didn't bother me. I told her, Salaam alaikum, please come on in and use my office. Totally fine. I have no issues with it because I understood, what their practices are. So I've never had such issues, but I know, in most institutions, they do have a place for namaz, like where if Muslims have to offer prayers at a certain time, but it's located in one place and it may not be in the proximity because they have very specific times they have to pray. So I think for me, understanding other practices has really helped me, even be more tolerant about what others' views are and listening to others. Thank you.
Well, I'll kind of address it. Thank you so much for being so understanding. It's very comforting to hear those kinds of things. As like some of the challenges that Muslims face in the workplace are finding a place to pray is one of them, and it just depends on your circumstances, on where you are. It depends on the time of day because the prayers are linked to the movement of the sun. So in the winter they're closer together, in the summer they're further apart. And so all of those factors come into play. And so people need to have a place and the time to be able to pray. And usually the prayers usually only take about, it doesn't take that long, usually about 10 minutes at the most, probably. Well, it shouldn't be that fast. It could be fast or slow, but only around an average of about 10 minutes. So there's that aspect of the things. When I, as a flight attendant, and there's certain movements, so you're supposed to have a space to do it. And when people pray, if you've seen Muslims praying, they put their face on the ground. Don't do that on an airplane. It's really yucky. I'll just tell you, don't put your face on an airplane floor. I usually end up praying in a seat while the airplane is being cleaned, and that's when I'm taking a break. So that's how I maintain praying. Some of the other more obvious things for Muslim women is the way that we cover. I started flying in 1985, and I started practicing Islam in 1995. I had a car accident, and I was out of work for 2 years, and I was able to study more about my faith and decided to start wearing hijab. And when I went back to work, they said, yeah, you can't do that in uniforms. So that was a challenge. And so I ended up contacting the EEOC, and the compromise was that I was able to work in the training department because it didn't require the wearing of a uniform. And the good thing about that is it kept my seniority, and I was able to maintain my status as a flight attendant during that time. It was a real window opening for me. I kind of looked at it that way because it allowed me to meet a lot of people while being in the training department. And I was able to develop a rapport with people. So when they finally changed the rules and let me start flying again, which was actually 9 years later, I had developed a rapport with a lot of the flight attendants. So it was pretty easy for me to transition into that. And since then, things have changed a lot, where now we just recently had in a uniform, and they actually designed a uniform for Muslim women. So they've come a long way in that regards as far as attire. So not just permitting a headdress, but also wearing or creating a uniform piece, because that's another aspect of Muslim dress, is to wear loose clothing. For both men and women, it's supposed to be loose. Another aspect as far as prayer goes is praying on Friday. Friday prayers are required, and some people have a hard time getting time off to go to Friday prayers. In Charlotte, luckily we've got different mosques throughout the area, and people, some start at 12:30 and some they have like a 2 o'clock session. So it's somewhere in between there. And sometimes, so it allows for some flexibility to go to different mosques. So there is some flexibility there for Muslims, but sometimes it's hard to get, people usually just take an extended lunch if they can on Fridays. So they have to kind of work around that kind of thing. So those are kind of some of the things that I really hope that was a question that you asked, because now I can't even remember. But those are some of the challenges that Muslims face in the workplace. I might have been answering the wrong question. Okay.
You'd answered it perfectly. Thank you, Rose.
And Rose, I'm glad that you shared your experience, especially about wearing the hijab and how it took your company 9 years to catch up to what they needed to be doing. And that's the sad thing about a lot of organizations are slow to respond to the needs of employees, and often do not respond until there is some sort of lawsuit against them, which is so unfortunate. But from an HR standpoint, I've seen a lot of areas where it's sometimes difficult to address everyone's religious needs. And sometimes you don't even think about it. Just think about your some sort of event that you're having where you're serving food. And who's going to pray? Will there be a prayer? Will we just have a moment of silence? How will we manage that? And, you know, there's a really humorous Facebook post that goes around about how an HR person manages a holiday party. It starts out as the Christmas party, and after 3 or 4 iterations, it's just totally canceled because everybody's needs can't be met. And so those are some of the types of issues we have to address. But of course, we want to accommodate everyone. I know during the holiday season, we have a menorah. We have, of course, our Christmas tree. We have the Kwanzaa. I can't remember what it's called right now, but we represent Kwanzaa and try to make it such that everyone is represented in some way. And even throughout the year, when there are adjustments that need to be made to policies and procedure, for example, relaxing some of the stringent dress code policies that are in place, or grooming policies, because there are some men who, as part of their religion, have to have a beard, or women who wear their hair a certain way, or times of day or days of the week where individuals have to be off so that they can participate in their religious observances. So these are some things that have been slow for organizations to adapt, but we are now seeing it more and more, where people are making sure that everyone is welcome and can come as their true selves at work.
I can I can jump in representing the agnostic faith or lack of faith. Again, it's the same word, it's absence. There's no agnostic holidays, there's no agnostic ceremonies, timing, anything. So, you know, as a person who practices that, I feel no discrimination. I feel no friction, nothing at all, as far as the workforce goes. But through the lens of a former Christian, I do recognize the inherent privilege of practicing Christianity in the United States affords you a lot of opportunities. Your religious affiliation, jewelry, if you're wearing a cross, taking off specific days, these are never questioned. It's assumed that at least 60 to 70% of the people would share your ideals and totally understand, you know, what you're doing. You pretty much are always in a majority. So I do recognize that and try to use, you know, my privilege that the other privilege I have to always look out for other religions that may feel, you know, where's my appreciation? Why does everybody not know what my what my head job is called, or what purpose it serves, and why I'm wearing it. Why is that not considered offensive or belittling for one gender to wear something or not? So I do look out for those. I'm at the point in my career where I am a hiring manager. I am in charge of decision making, and I tend to intentionally favor opting in strategies rather than opting out. So I encourage people to block off productive hours, productive collaboration hours where it does work for them. My team works in California, Arizona, Florida, a lot in Tennessee, Arkansas, everywhere. So we're already dealing with time zones. It's an easy step to say to schedule the hours that do work for you. You don't have to put someone on the spot and say, I need time off to pray, or I need this time in the morning, or I need a particular Friday off. It's definitely easier to say what hours you are available and to build asynchronous work schedules that work around that. What else? Yeah, I mean that's generally what I face. I guess that's all.
I'm a believer that every organization, every group, every religion, every entity of people has people that aren't the best representation of them. And so I try to be mindful of that. And I don't know if I think differently but one of my core values being compassion, then I think that we can all speak the language of pain when our first response is compassion. So I try to think through and ask questions in my role at Appalachian and in my role at church of what does this mean for others? For example, in the freedom of religion and the free exercise thereof is something that I'm constantly aware of. And in the free exercise thereof, I just don't only want that free exercise for me, I want that free exercise for Rose. And so I ask questions in my department of if it's not really free for me, is it really free for Rose? My job in 25 years has never been to bring Appalachian State to an altar call, but I have relationships with people and try to earn the right to be heard. And with that, I ask those questions. Some of the challenges that I face in that, and I ask questions like that with our student athletes. You know, I've got student athletes that are Muslim, and so if we're ordering pizza, they don't want pork on the pizza, and I have to explain over the years to coaches why that's problematic. And I don't think that that's a compromise of my faith as a Christian to have compassion for somebody who's trying to live out their faith in a different capacity. But again, we all have people that aren't the best representation of ourselves. I think I've learned a little bit too at the table of social justice to earn the right to be heard. But I do face some challenges sometimes when people hear the term Christian and pastor, they automatically assume that I'm trying to bring them to an altar call. I'm about to hand them a tract. I'm about to condemn them to heaven or hell. And so again, everybody has people who aren't the best representation of them. And I try to be mindful of that. In certain departments that I've worked in, it's required that you wear slacks or a button-down shirt and no jeans. And the administrators wear sports coats or suits. When I wear a sports coat or suit, then many times is, are you going to preach to me today? No, I mean, one, that's an insult to me as a Black man, because it's saying to me that you deem white administrators to be about business when they're in a suit, and you deem me to be about preaching when I am also about business. I those things. I got a call from several newspapers a few years ago because chaplains for different universities were conflicting between church and state issues. I have a certification as a life coach. I have a certification from the NCAA as a life coach. I've done several different executive leadership pieces. I'm a master teacher for Growing Leaders, which is a national leadership program for Division I student athletes. And the newspaper called me and said, "Are you the pastor of Appalachian State Athletics?" And I said, "Listen, are you a dad?" He said, "Yes." "How many kids you got?" He said, "3." I said, "Are you the dad of the Charlotte Observer?" No. I mean, just these assumptions that because of my faith that I'm here to try to, and I don't even like to use the term evangelize right now because the term evangelical has been hijacked to be political. And so I face those kind of challenges, or the other pieces. Privilege has layers. So yes, there's a lot of privilege to Christianity, and I don't know if they're mutually exclusive, but there's a lot of things that also go with being a Black man that is a Christian in a workspace that is predominantly white. And so I have those challenges, or moments that I've needed to take off for a funeral, or moments that I've needed to take off when there's certain emergencies. Then sometimes the idea of not my role, but Christianity comes up in there. You Christians are always doing these things. And so I feel like in some ways, I spend more time trying to, especially on the university circuit, trying to not be seen in some ways as a Christian, which is almost contradictory to my faith. One last story is because I've navigated through this for several years. One time there was one student that received a Bible. He wanted a Bible, received a Bible, and said something positive that he was encouraged by a Bible. And the compliance person sent messages out to every coach in the athletic department. "Did you receive Bibles from Reggie Hunt?" I didn't give the guy a Bible. And I went to human resources pretty upset, because what that did was there was other coaches that I've been doing leadership with for years, and a new coach had come, and I just met with the coach to explain the leadership program that has nothing to do with faith. And the first thing that the coach said to me is, "Are you going to preach to me?" Said, "I'm Catholic, I like wine." I said, "Well, I have nothing to do. I can recommend some wines to you." But at the same time, I was never able to work with that coach in the 5 years that he was here, because his impression of me was that I was going to preach to him. And I went to human resources to say, I spend a lot of time, navigating through earning the right to be heard, building the relationships. I have people that are in my inner circle that are agnostic. One of my close friends and an advisor to me is a very outspoken atheist, and he's an advisor to me and one of my best supporters of my leadership program. I have friends from a wide variety of places, and I was frustrated that I was sitting in human resources trying to explain as a pastor that I have not given Bibles. Like, that was my defense, so but that makes me more compassionate and more willing to hear from people who maybe have a different expression of faith, because the space that I want created is also the space that I want to share. That's it.
Sorry, I was muted. So, our question was, what are some of the traditions of your faith that could present issues in the workplace setting? I think right off the bat, this question kind of makes me think, religious traditions, from my experience, can really make people feel like an outsider sometimes, especially in the workplace. And that's an issue that's really hard to tackle. I'm a recent graduate. I've only been working in the professional work industry, the insurance industry, for about 6 months now. However, I've been working my whole life since I was 14. Some issues I've had to face are dietary restrictions and dealing with managers and coworkers and navigating that, because I keep kosher. Keeping kosher, it's a set of laws and regulations that's supposed to guide you within Judaism towards a, I guess, more meaningful, healthy way of life. And, part of living is eating. So we have restrictions that help guide us within that area of life. So that's been a really big struggle for me. And honestly, the best way I've dealt with it is by facing it head on and telling my managers, telling my coworkers up front, and really educating, because that kind of leads into my next point. Education is the only way that we're going to fix making people feel like outsiders in the workplace. And I think the next biggest thing, it's not really a tradition, but assumptions. Assumptions can really just make or break the beginnings of a relationship or understanding, and sometimes they're insignificant. But I think popular culture plays a big role in assumptions that people may have about Jews, Muslims, Christians. And my biggest thing, because I know people carry assumptions about Jews. For instance, a lot of people assume that Jews are white and only white, and that is just, it's not true. There are Jews of color, of every color, all over the world. In fact, my best friend is a Black Jew who goes to Appalachian State. He's a biology major named Aaron Carpenter. So if you see him, tell him I said hi. But I know a lot of Black Jews. I know a lot of Hispanic Jews, and that's just something to keep in. I love that in the comments. We love Aaron. Yes, Aaron is a hoot. But I think that's a really basic thing to keep in mind is, when you meet a Jewish person, when you meet a Christian, when you meet a Muslim, don't assume that, they're extremely religious or any level of religiosity. I think that's a word. Or that they live to a certain standard that you might picture in your mind about that specific religion. Especially in the workplace, you got to keep an open mind. I would say, as a Jewish person, another big thing for me is Judaism revolves around the lunar calendar, not the solar calendar that kind of the secular world lives in. So, that's a challenge, because my holiday schedule changes every year. Some days Hanukkah is right on Christmas. Sometimes it's in October. And I have to navigate that. And again, how I've dealt with that is just being upfront and telling people, taking off work if I need to. And another issue, so I'm a conservative Jew, which is kind of the middle ground of Judaism. You have the Orthodox Jews, which are more religious. Then you have Reform Jews, which are I want to say less observant. Less observant is a good way to say that. And I'm right here in the middle with conservative. For Orthodox Jews who are more observant, physical touch is a big deal. Men will only interact with men physically touch men, and women will only physically touch women. And that is due to the sacred bond that is kept between marriage. It's a respect. It's a symbolism of respect for your partner. So I haven't had to deal with that because I don't follow that tradition personally, but I've been in situations where I have a lot of Orthodox friends, and they've talked to me about that. And I know that's not just a thing that's singular to Judaism. I know that's similar in other religions, and that's something to keep in mind as well. because it's tough navigating when you hold yourself to different religious standards and other people might not know about it. So I've always been very upfront with my religious identity and the beliefs that I hold. And that's not easy. It's not always easy to put yourself front and center, telling someone else that you really don't know how you feel and how you live and how you pray. It's not very easy. And you know, I'm pretty young and I'm still trying to figure out my religious identity. I was blessed to have a solid Jewish community growing up, but my identity as a Jew is still growing. And there's so much Torah and books of Judaism for me to learn that I'm constantly growing. So I think it's a give and take situation. Like I'm no rabbi. I can't answer all your questions, but I do know a lot and I try to learn as much as possible. And I think we should try to expect that from one another, that we should learn as much as possible from one another in a positive and respectful way. I think that's the biggest way to treat traditional differences and differences in religion in the workplace. And I think that's all I had on my table for that question. Sorry if I went fast.
I so agree with you, Kobe, with everything that you've said, especially about educating people when the opportunity presents itself. Because a lot of people do things that are off-putting or even discriminatory because they don't know better. So educating them and having the conversations about the things that are important to us in the workplace is so important. Just talking about it like we're doing tonight, a courageous conversation.
Yep. And you know, over the past couple years now, Islamophobia and anti-Semitism have been on the rise like it's 1939. And funnily enough, a lot of the anti-Semitism and Islamophobia does not come from people who are, you know, so passionate about hating Jews and Muslims. It comes from people who just simply don't know the truth about what's going on. And you know, I've met people who've asked me, like, you know, you got horns? I've heard all sorts of anti-Semitic stuff growing up, and it's mostly from people who grew up very sheltered or they didn't know better, and it's really not their fault. And this is getting into a different topic that I'm touching on, but it leads back to educating people, because if we kind of sit in our corner and judge that person for asking or saying something disrespectful or hurtful, we're not giving them the opportunity to learn. And I've tried to kind of change my perspective on that when I maybe hear something a little bit anti-Semitic, or maybe that wasn't really the right thing to say, is I give them a chance, because there's a solid, you know, opportunity there to change someone's view and show them the right way to look at something. And if you don't take that opportunity, they're never going to learn any different.
I just wanted to add one comment, kind of based on what Kobe was saying. So one of the things, and again, when people hear Hindus or from India, it doesn't mean we are all vegetarians. You know, Hindus, there are Hindus who are atheists. There are Hindus who don't practice, you know, some of the things, and, you know, they may eat everything. So there's some people just assume things. So I am a vegetarian. So one of the challenges that I've had is there are certain days that I observe, certain fasts, or I don't eat certain food. So when I'm at work and the colleagues go out for lunch, I accompany them, but I just don't eat certain things. Or I will say, I'll come with you just for company, but I won't eat because it's a religious, I'm observing something that, prevents me, I don't want to do it because that's my faith and I believe in it. Some people are understanding. Some people will make a little joke out of it. And I've just kind of developed, thick skin to just let it pass. But for those who really ask me, I try to explain, the reasons as to why we're doing this. And one other thing, as Kobe mentioned, I put that in the chat box, is Hindu festivals also follow the lunar calendar. So our festivals fall on different days. So obviously, the only thing is we do observe those festivals, but not in the same manner, because there are certain times you have to do certain things. And I don't really take off, time from work to do it. We just kind of flex it and say, we'll do it in the evening instead of the morning, or we'll do it that weekend instead of during the middle of the week. So that's one thing nice about Hinduism, is it's very tolerant and gives you the space to observe and do things in your own way. And some of my colleagues tell me, or some of my friends who are of Christian faith or others say, oh, Sunday morning, we can meet. I'm sure you're going to your church or temple. In Hinduism, you don't have to go to a temple or be at a certain place to pray. You can be anywhere, anytime you can pray. So it's very different in the way we observe, because again, there's a God in you, there's a God in every person. And if you just did a good deed for that day, that's totally fine. It's not like you have to pray every time or at certain times of the day. So it's very tolerant, and it's very different in the way people can interpret those guidelines or the tenets and create their own pathway, if you will. So just wanted to share that.
Thank you, panelists, for your answers. It was amazing to hear such insightful conversation, and we were able to see in the comments as well how students were engaging with your answers. So thank you again. I'm now going to pass it to Dr. Parson to conclude our main portion of the event and direct us towards breakout rooms.